this going. Excellent. Welcome to Rehab Your Passion. This has been something that has been heavily on my mind for the last several months, very specifically from surveys to coaching interviews, client exploration, and just being really curious about, okay, what are we going into as a larger population in 2024? And not in totality. I'm not here to claim to have authority over what the entire population is experiencing or even a large part of it, but I'm here to share what my experiences are from my perspective. I'm also not here to tell you things that are absolutely true. Okay, that sounds weird to say right off the bat. Like, I'm not here to tell you the things that are absolutely correct for you, that are absolutely the way that it's going to work for you. I personally believe that no human being on the planet has the right to tell you that. No one here has the right to tell you how you're going to navigate this. Okay, so I've heard the phrase for years, you've got to do what it takes. You've got to do what it takes. And in essence, in commitment, I believe that. You've got to do what it takes. But I believe that no one gets to tell you what it is. What it takes is going to be so unique and be so many variables for every single one of you. So if you've ever had someone say, if you want to be where I'm at, first of all, if someone says that, please run the other direction, because you don't want to be where they're at. You want to be where you're going to be at. In fact, you want to be where you're at right now. You want to be right here, right now. Like we've turned this into a cliche, and yet it is the foundation of our existence. The idea that the only thing you will ever be able to experience is right now. The happiest you will ever be able to be will be how happy you are able to be right now. Now, notice I deliberately said how happy you are able to be right now, not necessarily how happy you feel right now in this right now, but your capacity right now is your reality. That's what you're going to experience. So I want to give you some paradigm shifts, because we're going to talk about things you've probably heard a lot about: accountability, goals, being here and now, and all these different things, desire and wanting it and passion. But I'm hoping to shift a couple of things, because I've been doing this for the better part of almost 2 decades, and almost all of my energy has gone into creating a laboratory for the human experience, of getting to spend time with thousands and thousands of people in corporate America, in entrepreneurship, in their marriages, in trauma work, and just going back to the lab every day, being able to go, okay, what actually works? And why does it work? And why did this stop working? And what was it we didn't really realize about the way we were trying to make this work that really just needs a tweak rather than an overhaul, and all these different things? And in all that time, what I want to share with you this morning has been where I continue to come back to. There's so many roots of success, so many roots and breadcrumbs and ideas of how to create what you want. And I may be here to give you a disappointingly limited amount of information in terms of the strategic elements of getting there. One of the reasons for that, though, is because that is so overrated. And yet it's what we spend the most money for. We're addicted to it. We're addicted to the, I don't want to get rich quick scheme, but that seems to be what my bank account doesn't agree with, because that's what I spend money for. I mean, there are literally marketers out there right now whose job is to sell you a get-rich-quick scheme and call it something else. And we keep going for it. Why? Not because we're idiots, but because they understand our biology. They understand how our brains are built, and we're addicted to it. We're addicted to the easy button. We're addicted to the concept. Oh, there it is. That's what I've been missing. I'm not here to take some crusade, like we need to go with torches and pitchforks to go and burn down the establishment of marketing, whatever else. No, like props. They studied your biology. They studied how your brain works. I'm here to just give you a little bit more of an edge so that you can start to be aware of what they're using. I don't want to say against you. That's a little bit antagonistic, but what they're using to leverage their agenda so that you can use it to leverage your own, so that you can use it to unlock the greatest technology you will ever invest in, and that is you, your body. And when I say your body, I mean your mind, your heart, and your gut, which are the most significant neural networks that exist in your system. Okay? So, and poetically, we could go into all kinds of different things neurologically. The heart was developed first in embryo, and then it actually lent the tissue, borrowed the tissue to the brain and the gut to be developed. Did you know that? Isn't that cool? I love looking for little signals like that in how we are scientifically, if you will, if we want to take a Newtonian perspective, and how we are mechanically built to be able to understand deeper principles. Like one of my other, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Belle. I'll say that again. The heart was developed first in embryo. Okay, when you were developing as a human organism, the heart was the first organ created, and then it borrowed that blueprint, if you will, that neurological setup to the brain to create it one of its companions, and to the gut to create its other companion. And all three of those are what create what I call the whole body mindset. Understanding how those dance together, how those play together, is a big part of where my personal coaching practice has landed. And you can go around and find lots of ways to leverage mostly the head heart, or the head brain, the head mind, and then usually using a little bit of the heart mind to attract you to it, to be a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more poetic. But most people are disregarding, probably at this stage, the most important one, and that's the gut mind. But I want to dive into this right off the bat. I think we're about there in terms of people joining and jumping in for the most part. So welcome, glad you're here. Let's dive in. We're talking about rehabbing or rebuilding your passion. First, I think what is super important is to define passion. Okay. Passion in etymology, words, which are limiting factors, but we'll use them the best we can today. Passion, and the etymology depends on what century you want to jump to. Okay, if you want to jump to the 15th century, you're going to find something different than if you jump to the 2nd century. I like the 12th century, so I'm not in general, but I like the 12th century's definition of passion, where the etymology comes from being subject to your feelings, subject to your emotions. Passion is feeling. It's feeling. Somewhere along the way in our quote unquote enlightened society, because apparently the internet has made us all gurus and shamans and sages, and our Facebook page is the equivalent of that tin hut. We live in the bottom of the mountain in Nepal, and we have all the wisdom. Thank you, Google. So the opportunity to be able to dive in and see that we have turned feelings into a menu, into personal preference. Somehow we've been convinced that the way to what we want is to only feel what we want. We only want to feel good. We only want, and that's subjective. Everybody's got a different version of that. Okay, one of the most devastating things is in our research at the previous company that I was with, partnered with my dad at Habit Finder, that most of you are familiar with, is we realized that most people craving peace settle for numb because it's been so painful. That numb actually gets interpreted by the brain as feeling good because it's not painful, not because it's actually peaceful. Not because it's actually that rejuvenating, grounded, beautiful place to operate from. So today we are building on the foundation of whole body mindset, that the secret, the key to feeling better is to get better at feeling. And I want to give you some frameworks for this. I want to help point out some things, not that you had wrong, but needed a little bit more context, a little bit more expansion is what we're going for today. And it's going to be off the basis that passion is being subject to emotions and feelings. It is the opportunity to dance with them, to harmonize with them. As Og Mandino pointed out in The Greatest Salesman in the World in his chapter, I will be master of my emotions. He pointed out that as we understand biologically, you don't get to choose your feelings. You don't get to choose consciously from the neocortex your emotions, but you can always harmonize with them. Okay, if you think about an orchestra, you don't always get to decide what music is playing, but you can decide to pick up an instrument and play in harmony with it. And that's a really beautiful place to live. Here's the other point I want you to grab onto as setting the foundation for today's conversation, and that is what passion is not. And this might be a tough one for some of you to land. Passion is not motivation. It's not motivation. And that is what I see being thrown around out there today in this modern neo world of personal development, that you want to be passion driven, as if that is this motor, this engine that drives you forward in a way that you can just try to hang on because you're so excited about everything. That's not passion. That's a part of passion because that's a feeling. So if we're going to be subject to, if we're going to embrace and actually experience our feelings, one of those may be motivation. But what we tend to do is we find that one and go, oh, this is what they were talking about. This is how I build. This is how I get out of bed at 4 a.m. in the morning. This is how I go. So I got to figure out how to grab it and hang on to it. And it is in the clinging of what we have thought passion was that we find another feeling that is also part of passion, and that is suffering. Suffering. And when I say suffering, if I can clarify, I mean unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering. For me, unnecessary suffering is the suffering that comes that wasn't necessary. It came from trying to hold on to how I thought I was supposed to feel. And so what I needed to feel, what my body needed to let out or flow through or process, started getting held back and building up tension, building up pressure, and then boom, it got louder. I learned a long time ago that the body can teach you with a feather or it can teach you with a hammer. And you get to decide which one you want to learn from. Now, everybody here, I would imagine, go, I'll take the feather. That's not necessarily easier in some regards, because it can be harder to hear and feel the feather. There are some things you've got to do, and we're going to talk about that today. Now, when it comes to our feelings, I mentioned loving biological markers, okay, different things. There are two worlds that we kind of operate in. We've got the here and now world, and we've got the more world. And that's how we're biologically set up. We actually have neurotransmitters, chemicals in the brain, that some are built for here and now. And interestingly enough, I want you to hear this if you're not familiar with the work on brain chemistry, specifically around dopamine, we only have one for more. We have several to help us really enjoy and feel and be here and now, okay? And they're things like serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, something that ends in noid, and a few others, okay? There's at least half a dozen primary neurotransmitters to allow here and now to be amazing when they are healthy and regulated. And there's only one that is designed to drive you into more, into building more, creating more, becoming more, and that's dopamine. And it is powerful. We don't need more than one. Here's one of the challenges that we've got in defining passion by motivation and building hostage situations. What I mean by that is taking our vivid visualization to dream about the life we wish we had. And then we see that so clearly, we build something called a new mental construct, a new reality. And it gets us high, okay? It releases chemicals. It feels amazing. And then we bring it back to the here and now, okay, where for most of us, those neurotransmitters are inhibited and dysregulated, and our nervous system is not agreeing with the brain's desire to make it awesome, because we don't want what we already have, where we already are, to be awesome. We want where we wish we were to be awesome. And that creates a hostage situation. And that's one of the primary things that has us starting to reject and refuse certain feelings and to cling to and try to hang on to others, creating a very violent experience of the only thing that will ever exist for us in this life, and that's right now. Okay? So there's the foundation for today's conversation. Passion is being subject to your feelings. It's actually feeling what you're feeling. It is not motivation. Biologically, we are built to be in love with here and now, and we only need a little bit of more so that we actually are willing to do things to get more. Now, there's been this crusade and this violent battle against that, as if the here and now was playing small, as if the here and now was being mediocre, as if that was like leprosy or something. And so it is interesting. Also, keeping in note, biologically, you have twice as many, actually 3 times as many pleasure centers as you do pain receptors in your body. So we could, I think, from a zoomed out level, assume that nature wants us to feel pleasure twice as much as pain. That's pretty rad. Okay, please don't raise your hand, but how many of you have nailed that? How many of you are currently taking inventory and going, wow, yeah, I experience extraordinary pleasure twice as much as I experience pain or frustration or other things like that? Now, it's not no pain, no frustration, because there are necessary parts of more. There are necessary parts of the dance between all 3 of the head and the heart and the gut, all right? But it's about stepping back and going, okay, maybe what we've been being taught was more for motivation, more for marketing, more for getting a temporary high that we end up chasing for the rest of our lives. Because what happens is we start depending on dopamine to be able to create more, to want more, but we don't have a place to bring it back to. Because our nervous system is dysregulated, our gut mind is hijacking our current reality. And so we keep going to more. We keep going to the future. We keep going to what's going to happen later. And whatever we create there, conceptually or actually, comes back to a place that it has nowhere to take root, has nowhere to plug in. And so what do? We go, oh, that must not have been it. So we go back to the bar, addicted to this stuff. Ouch. Ouch. I've found over 20 years of this work that the people who really honor here and now, really do the work to feel through their current reality and to find peace with it, to find sensitivity to it, that really fall in love with where they are right now, don't need much to become more. In fact, it becomes a very natural process. Anyone here ever had times in their life where they were struggling with growing your income, growing your business? Okay, staying motivated, staying driven. Okay, if we were to boil this down and oversimplify it, it comes down to being addicted to a singular neurotransmitter and having nowhere for what it drives us to actually plant it, to actually be able to enjoy it. Okay, and so we find ourselves in this perpetual, if we were going to use really dramatic language, nightmare, where we get these brief shots of like, oh, this is incredible, but we never get to feel like it's ours. And so even when we actually acquire on paper what we really wanted, it never gets to feel like it's ours. It doesn't fulfill us because there's no ground for it to take roots in the here and now, which again is all we've got. So what do we do about that? I promised you 3 secrets to being able to rebuild, rehabilitate your passion. 3 secrets to being able to increase your income with less work And I stand by that 100%. That these things absolutely do that if you are willing to be patient and present. And it might be a little challenging. It might be, as people talk about, it's got to get worse before it gets better. And that's usually an interpretation of the mind in this case, that it's got to get different before it gets better. Okay, some of us have become addicted to what I call pseudo transformation, where we're in the room of our life and we just keep rearranging the furniture and trying to convince ourselves it's a different place. Even some of us have changed the wallpaper and just called things different, but it's still the same infrastructure. It's still the same scaffolding. Well, actual transformation is one of the most terrifying things you will ever participate in, because the biggest moving heavy machinery in your mind does not like anything it can't predict. Okay? And we've got things like the reticular activation center, mirror neurons, and many others that are literally designed to manifest a reality that fits with your nervous system. Dysregulated nervous system, you need a dysregulated reality, or it freaks out. Okay? If we've got major traumas and shames and unhealthy attachments, and we are dissociated and all these different things, and we are sitting there going, I just wish things would go right. If they actually did for a sustained period of time, you'd lose your mind. It sounds nice, just like the person who's like, I just want to retire and sip Mai Tais and play golf every day. I've met a lot of those people. They last about 3 days. And then they are blown away at how they can't handle it. They can't do it. Anybody here, that person that takes a couple of days to sink into your vacation and then needs a couple of days of a vacation after your vacation? Another interesting indicator that we're having this challenge. And I remember how challenging and liberating it was to realize that the reality I am experiencing is exactly the one I need right now. It is exactly the one that allows all the parts of me to feel at home. Not necessarily to feel good, as we might define it here in the cognitive brain. What's a vacation? I'll look up some articles and send it to you. And the challenge here is sorry, I got a little derailed by that. Where was I headed? With that said, it's okay. Totally fine. Those of you who haven't worked with me, I am not someone who stands on ceremony and formality. It's why I appreciate a lot of you being here in a Zoom room, not in a webinar, contrast, or whatever. Okay. So thank you, Joey. The reality we're experiencing is actually you could actually think about it's the most merciful, loving thing you can be experiencing right now, because of the things you currently believe, the things you think you believe, the things you actually believe, the things you currently want, the things you actually want, all these different things, that if it showed up as to what you fantasize about, you would freak out. In fact, Claire W. Graves, who is the founder of my favorite human development model called Spiral Dynamics, he was asked in an interview about happiness and stuff, and he said the most intriguing thing that I've ever heard about happiness. He said, if mankind were given absolute happiness, they would be looking for the first cliff to jump off of. We wouldn't be able to handle it. And yet this is what we are seemingly chasing. This is what we're sold to chase, to stay in the hamster wheel that creates the electricity that allows the machine to keep going. Okay, and we can talk about the matrix another day, of the world that we live in, and how to be able to take advantage of it, how to be able to step out of it when appropriate. But I'm going to give you pieces for that anyway. But that's something you'll want to land with. Your current reality is not a threat. It's actually the most loving thing that it can provide to you. Your biology, your reticular activation center, your mirror neurons, your quantum mechanics are constantly bringing things into your life, relationships, okay? The amount of income you've got, all of this stuff that is the most predictable, in other words, the most comfortable to your nervous system, not the most comfortable to your cognition. We can agree on that, right? Like not everybody here is like, oh my gosh, I'm so comfortable all day, every day. But your nervous system is. And until we start to regulate it differently, until we start to dance differently with our whole body mindset, we're going to be continually required to just play a manipulative game, which if that's where you want to operate, no judgment. There are lots of programs out there to teach you how to get into a peak state and to stay focused and get up in the morning and do this stuff immediately so that you can go, 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 go. And then at the end of the day, be a good exhausted and all this stuff. Like, okay, cool. There's a lot of things out there to help you do that. And I can look around here and see a lot of us that have subscribed to a lot of that. And again, I'm not trying to be passive aggressive to say that's bad. I know some really wonderful people that are really amazing in that space. And I'm grateful that there are people to speak to that for people that are in that place and aren't quite sure how to get somewhere else. But that's not the people I'm talking to this morning. Okay, so let's talk about the first way to be able to increase your income. And I mean income in a lot of senses, your actual financial income. Okay, I like that one a lot. Most of the clients I work with like that one a lot. Okay. But the income of your relationships, the income of your ideas, your inspiration, your spiritual income, whatever it might be. The first thing you're going to want to do, not the first thing, but one of the three, is to start understanding what freedom really is. When we can start changing the construct of what we believe freedom in, which is the number one driver of entrepreneurs, independent thinkers, and leaders, the number one driver is freedom, and they get split into two parts. Anyone want to guess what they are? Two freedoms that get named more than anything, the most common drivers for people in this world. If I've got the chat up, see if anybody can figure it out. Anybody? Yep. Financial freedom and time freedom. Nailed it. Financial freedom and time freedom are the most common blanketed motivation, dream. It all comes as sub-levels under that, the drive to be able to get there. What's interesting about that is we're chasing something we don't even fully understand. Certainly, we don't even embody. Okay, freedom, if we want to make this really simple so we can start working with it, comes down to one thing: options. Freedom is options. The more options you have, the more freedom you have. The less options you have, the less freedom you have. Here's an interesting thing to consider. Guess what the whole goal of your brain and your body is when it is in a survival mode? When it is hijacked for survival, fight or flight or freeze, which freeze is just freezing the energy to fight or flight, hoping you can use it later. That's all it is. Okay, so it's not a different energy. It's taking the energy your body created to be able to fight something or run away and make that decision in about a third of a second and freeze that, hoping you'll be able to do that later. Guess what the whole objective of that is? To limit your options. It's literally to take your freedom away. Why? Why would we ever want to take our freedom away? Because we are at the base level of our existence. We could die. At least that's what we believe. And the more dysregulated your nervous system, the more you respond to more things as if you will die. Okay? Every fear you ever experience in your life boils down to the fear of death. Well, I'm not afraid of death. I'm just afraid that my business is going to fail. And if we were to dive in and actually track, well, what happens if your business fails? Well, then I can't pay my mortgage and I can't support my kids. And what happens if that happens? Well, then they hate me and then I'm a terrible person and I get depressed and sad and then we lose our home and we live on the streets and then they go and leave me behind and You get down eventually and you die. You don't even need to hear those stories because that's not how your nervous system operates. It operates in sensation. So the sensation that we're going to lose something instantly gets converted into, and that's going to lead to our death. So if freedom is more options and survival mode, which is what a lot of us are driving from when we rely on motivation, momentum, these are all external forces that we're dying to grab onto because we don't know that we have what we need to survive. then this kind of hijack survival is literally the removal of our freedom. And most of us have been operating in mildly a semi-survival state most days. And it's why we get so hooked on, I want to feel this way and I don't want to feel that way. That's a survival dichotomy. That's limiting my options rather than being able to feel whatever comes into my scope, into my orbit. And as we know biologically, your body wants you to feel pleasure more than pain. So there's an interesting motivation. There's an interesting insight as to, okay, maybe if I actually allow myself to feel what I'm actually feeling, rather than try to think that I can control it, then I won't keep setting off this survival mechanism that literally, on a neurological level, an autonomic level, meaning more than automatic, removes your options. In other words, it removes your freedom. So when we can start to understand that, we can start to play a different game. Let me grab my cord here because I want to show you something. That turns off my laptop. Okay, there we go. Excellent. Okay, I'm glad I didn't shut the actual Zoom room down. So excellent. Oh, thank you, Dee. There's lots of it to go around. Okay, let me show you this. In terms of options, this is a really important piece. Where are you? Share. Ta-da! All right.
Hey, Paul, I don't know if you wanted to record this, but it said the recording stopped. I don't know if you returned it on just for your own sake and our sake.
Thank you.
It's recording.
It says yeah, I just started it again, but thank you, Joey. I appreciate it. Wouldn't be the first time that I let that slip. So excellent. Couple of things I want you to understand in this space. First is our quadrant of options. First, we have on this initial level what we think and what we embody. Okay? This is what we desire or what we want. And this vertical axis is what we believe. And this is a framework that you can use to start expanding your awareness, which is critical to being able to start to expand your options. So in this first upper left quadrant, it's an opportunity to understand that this is what I think I want. This is what I actually want or desire. When I say actually, I mean embodied, meaning my nervous system, my entire being, it would be able to coexist with this desire coming into fruition into my life. The actualization, the embodiment of it, which is different than the cognition, which has this unlimited scope, no boundaries to jump into the past, the future, create a mansion and a billion-dollar nonprofit that creates wells in Africa in your mind in like half a second. Okay. Then there is what I believe about what I want. Excuse me, what I think I believe. Then there is what I actually believe. About what I want. It's impossible to create more options without expansion. Our body, our system has a finite capacity. The brain, interestingly enough, does not. And that has its gifts and its beauty, and it can be super helpful to be able to leverage that properly. But in our brain-driven, overstimulated cognitive world, conceptual world at that, we have become slave to our concepts. And yet we have contradictory embodiment. So our concept may be, I want more. I want to create this. I want this. And then we go to try and actually create it, and we run into what is actually embodied. And we wonder why it doesn't work out. We wonder why we can't get what we want. Well, why? Because it's more than likely just what we think we want. And the parameters for that are based on what we think we believe. Like, you may think you want more money, but if you don't understand what you actually believe about money, then we might be out of alignment with what we actually want about money. Now, when what you think you want and what you actually want are in alignment, this is called flow. Anyone who here's heard the term flow before? This mystical, magical unicorn of energy that things just seem to happen more naturally and with less effort. It's a beautiful place to live and operate. But when what you think you want and what you actually want are not in alignment, guess what we've got to use to make up the difference? Force. An unbelievably exhausting energy that does not rejuvenate itself the way that flow does, that does not tap into this entire quadrant of alignment with what you think and embody. So you can think about something you want, and the embodiment of that option is able to expand to make room for it. Okay? Because if we don't do this, here's what happens. We set a goal that we think we want based on parameters that we think we believe about it, and we can create it. That's something that's so amazing about this brain. We can create it temporarily. Who's experienced this? Who's set a goal? Who's had that season where you got to this place, and right when you got there, it was like, this is awesome, but some part of you was like, I'm not sure I can stay here. Some part of you wasn't even sure you were allowed to celebrate being there for fear that you'd lose your grip and slide back down to where you were. Okay, we have this proximity to our current reality, our current homeostasis, where we can manipulate it forward for a time, and then we can also sabotage it to fall back for a time. In fact, a lot of us have learned this really interesting pattern to sabotage it so we feel like such crap that we get to slingshot ourselves into more for a brief time and then crash back into less. But at the end of the day, the thermostat's still set right here based on what you actually embody. Okay? Yes. Adrenal fatigue and stories. Oh, guys, the stories. The narrative about it must be me. Something's wrong with me. Everybody else is doing it, but I'm not. Most of you that have ever had that story are in communities, groups, teams, where enough people are on this side of the thermostat at any given time that your brain convinces you that they're always there. And social media has made it so easy to just give snapshots of this part, not this part. And so other people are doing the same thing that we are, but when we get into a community, when we get into culture, okay, which every culture has a little bit of cult in it, okay, which can be a helpful thing so that people don't just run in and run out before realizing whether it's something that could actually help them. But with that said, when you have even a handful of people, there's at least one person who could be on the positive side at any given time, and your brain's going to be convinced that that person must always be there. But when we pay closer attention, okay, we find out that, wow, almost everyone's experiencing this. How many of you have ever gotten behind the curtain with someone who you thought was like, oh my gosh, I thought things were always up here. And then you found out, wow, they were doing the same thing I was. Sheesh. And to say, oh, but they were lucky enough to do it with 50,000 a month to 70,000 a month to 40,000 a month, and I was doing it at 5,000 a month to 7,000 a month to 4. The number doesn't matter. I promise. It doesn't matter, because even if I could snap my fingers and send you up there, you'd still be feeling exactly the same way. Okay, if you're not sure, I want you to think about 21-year-old you. And if you told 21-year-old you what you made last year, What would 21-year-old think? What? Whoa. Nice job. Do you know how many movies we could go see every weekend with that kind of money? Like having some playful with the narrative, but like that's the challenge is we play this torturous game and then we eventually, because we don't totally quit, we notch up, but we never felt the notch up because we were still playing the same violent game. And then it notches up and we didn't notice it because we were still playing the same violent game. And I've worked with people who are playing that game in the millions of dollars a month. And they're still experiencing life the same way. So, becoming more aware of our options and what are the things that unconsciously strip us of options and what are the ways that we can expand our embodiment of options is the first key. Okay. The second one is your desire, which I blended all together with that visual. Your desire is the thinking versus the actualization, that quadrant. All right. And understanding the survival response and the way it strips you of your freedom involuntarily to protect you, actually, is the other piece. But I want to add some pieces to this second one with desire, in addition to the quadrant. And that is that there are two things you're going to want to work on, and that is nonviolent accountability and experimental goals. Nonviolent accountability and experimental goals. Accountability and goals have become the shield and the sword of violence in the quest of personal development and growth, which is really the quest of tickling your fancy about making more money. But we want to make it sound more holistic than that so that you don't feel like you're a vain, terrible human being, and you'll continue to invest lots of money to be able to continue to chase that down. Now, not goals and accountability have become weapons in and of themselves, but they have been presented to you that way. Okay? How many of you have found a little bit greater success having someone to hold you accountable? Okay? A lot of us have, right? That if it's just me going to the gym every morning, that's one thing. But if I'm going to the gym with another person that I know is counting on me being there, what's interesting about that is that's not accountability. That's pressure, peer pressure. That's FOMO. That's not accountability. Accountability, the ability to account for something, is about your level of consciousness and clarity. We've turned it into this engine that drives us forward, this drill sergeant that keeps us on track. How many of you have ever been to a major company before? Fortune 500, Global 50. Have you ever been to the accounting department? Anyone ever or know someone that's worked in the accounting department? Do they seem to be the essence of power and inspiration and ideas and drive? No, they're the bean counters. They're simply the ones who make sure the COO and CEO know where the company is actually at brass tacks, that they have clarity around the reality of the company. That's what accountability is for you. That's all it is clarity. And we have underestimated the power of clarity in this world. When we are clearer, when we are more conscious, suddenly the need for motivation goes down because we start coming from a more sustainable place. So much of the need for, I just saw simultaneously, multiple people just took a big deep breath. Okay, like almost like subtly as a group, like, ooh. Just wanting to give space for that. Big deep breath. Okay, there can be a lot of narratives that show up when we start to uncover some of these things, when we start to get some of these V8 forehead smack kind of moments. The need for motivation comes from a mode of abuse. And the only way we can pull it off is we convince ourselves that in some dimension of our brain that we are an inanimate object, that we are a machine, not a human being. because those are the only things we would ever treat as poorly as we treat ourselves. If we were conscious more often of our humanity, if we were clearer about who we are, it would be far more difficult to treat ourselves the way that we do in the name of getting us to where we think we want to be. That land for anybody? That hit something new for anybody? Yeah. But it's not just a kumbaya, like, just feel better. No, it's actually to say, if you'll get through the threshold, which is not easily done. Not everyone's willing to walk through the desert of their coping mechanisms, walk through the deconstruction of what their system has convinced themselves because of uninformed consent, because of programming, brainwashing, if you want to use a more dramatic word, of how we get what we want in this world at the sacrifice of what we actually want. That's an interesting equation. If we'll get through that threshold, more is your birthright. More is not something you have to earn. That is something that is your birthright. But if more is about building houses while you're burning yours down, and then once you actually get that house built, if you can actually pull that off, because the one you're living in is burning, then you just adopt that one and burn that one down to create the next one. And we never actually expand. We never actually grow. We've got to start embodying and experiencing our options differently. We're going to want to be allowing ourselves to be on an expansive track rather than a linear one. Linear tracks play into our survival mechanisms. They allow us to abuse ourselves because we're focused on this rather than all of this. And accountability is taking account for the 360 degrees that is you. That is your life, allowing yourself to become clear about that. We don't need that to be a violent awareness. My favorite example of this, my favorite analogy for this is the greatest weight loss device ever created in the history of the world, statistically, and that's a food journal. A food journal is the most effective way to lose weight of any mechanism out there. The challenge is we take this linear, unembodied, motivating, violent approach to our lives, and we apply it to the use of the food journal, and we manipulate it, and we taint it just as much as we are with the rest of the areas of our life. Meaning, we're not just writing down accountability, which is simply writing down what you actually ate and the caloric intake of it. We want to be writing down what we should be eating. We want to write down what we want to be eating, which we actually don't want to be eating it. We want to look a certain way, which we don't actually want to look a certain way. We want to look a certain way so that we can feel what we think looking that way will allow us to feel. And that's the big illusion, because we don't have to look anyway to actually feel that way. If, coming back full circle to the beginning of this conversation, we're willing to feel what we're actually feeling. When we land in that place, again, you don't need the manipulation, the motivation to get what you want. That's what you need when you are abused. That's what you need when your brain patterns, your thinking has convinced yourself that you are a machine that you need to take a wrench and hit the side of to get it working properly. That you are a machine that is built to be worn into the ground. That's what you're built for. My car is built to be able to go a certain number of miles and then not be able to go anymore. That's not you. You, if I could shift a little bit of gears here, sincerely, are eternal. You are not a machine. Your body is not a machine. It's actually smarter than your brain. One of my favorite quotes ever: your brain is a great traveling companion, but it was never meant to make your decisions. Why would you want the thing that is not subject to here and now and your actual reality to be the one informing you on how to create your actual reality? Again, it's a great companion. Your cognition can do things that your body cannot. But your body is the part of you, your heart, your gut is the part of you that is present all the time. It doesn't have a concept of time. It is totally present. The cognition is all over the place. So it is constantly trying to figure out how to manipulate what you see because it can't feel. And yet the secret to feeling better is to get better at feeling. Did you know, literally, biologically, your brain has no nerves? It has no pain receptors, no pleasure receptors. That's why if you've ever seen brain surgery, the only thing that's painful is getting to the brain, but the brain itself does not need to be anesthetized. Because it can't feel. Literally, it can't feel. And that's what we're relying on. If you were going on a hike, if you were going to go work out with someone who couldn't feel pain, would you want to be following that person? Would you trust them and their guidance for what you should and shouldn't do to not break your body down? But that's what we're all doing. We're letting our brain lead us into these places, and we're doing it with violent accountability, and we're doing it with goals that are built into our self-worth, that are expectations, which are concrete conditions for happiness. We're using accountability like some weapon, some whip, and we're using goals as some standard we have to meet or we're not good enough. So if you want to create more income, and again, whatever that income is to you, financial, spiritual, emotional, relationships, whatever, with less work, you're going to want to start partnering with your body, with you, with the head, the heart, and the gut. Because we keep trying to bypass it, and we're going to keep needing violent, manipulative approaches to get these little highs now and again. And maybe we'll get a notch up because we're playing the law of averages and we just didn't stop. We didn't quit. Congratulations. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. I'm grateful you didn't quit. You got here this morning because you didn't quit. Okay. And so we're going to have a certain foundational increase just because we decided to make it to our next birthday. With that said, again, if you take nothing more from today's conversation, it is that more is not something you have to earn. It is your birthright. If we're willing to nurture here and now, because that's anything that can be more is going to be rooted and planted in the here and now. So the last one I want to talk about, the third piece to creating more income with less work, is to understanding your whole body mindset, your thinker mind, your heart mind, your gut mind, and understanding how it actually works. Okay. Let me bring this screen back up. To be able to kind of help us grab onto this a little bit more clearly, I need give me a moment to draw this. It's a very complicated scientific diagram. It's called a stick figure. Okay, good. Pulled it off. Pressure to do it in the moment. Okay. This stick figure is going to represent us. And there's a couple of things we're going to want to keep in mind here. Okay, we've got as we mentioned, the thinker mind. Got the heart mind. We've got the gut mind. The thinker mind is completely based in thoughts. Okay, imagine that. The heart mind is based in your feelings and emotions, and the gut is based in sensation. All three are critical to being able to both enjoy the here and now and to create more. And if we don't do that, no matter how much more you create, you'll never be fulfilled by it. You'll never be able to actually have it feel like yours. Okay, it's interesting. The parts of the brain that want more are not the parts of the brain that can actually enjoy it. This hits home a little bit more for some people if you realize that the part of your brain that wants sex is not the part of your brain that can actually enjoy it. Did you know that? The part of your brain that wants to eat more food or certain foods is not the part of your brain that can actually enjoy it. Thus, when we give into our thinking desires versus our embodied desires, we end up feeling like crap afterwards, even though in the moment we were so convinced that it would feel good. Feeling good about more is a unbelievably limited factor. As I heard it put once, it is writing checks that it cannot cash. And we become addicted to that because we're not aligning these three minds. We are not allowing our mindset to encompass a whole body approach. Now, each of these has biological markers. We've got the neocortex for the thinker. We've got the mammalian aspect of us in the heart and the reptilian aspect in the gut. But what I want to talk about in terms of the key to being able to create more, actually enjoy it, and require less work are the hijacks to this system working properly. And the hijacks are shame, unhealthy attachments, and trauma. Shame is the embodied belief, the sensation that there is something about you that is not okay, that is wrong. Anything, everything about you. Okay. And shame was actually learned in the presence of another person, a perceived authority or person, or an actual person. Okay. You were playing in the kitchen, creating a potion in the sink with everything you could find underneath it. And then your mom came in and went, "What are you doing?" And you suddenly went from playful and fun to, "I am bad. I am wrong. The person who gives me love and nurturing is pointing out that I am bad. I am wrong." And we don't know what to do with that. And it gets trapped in our system. And now so much of what we operate in is in the fear that I am not okay, because if I'm not okay, then love will go away. And if love goes away, I will die. That's the logic of this part of the system. Shame is what blocks our business. It's what blocks our dreams. It hijacks them. All the energy we would be putting into building a more successful business, building our dreams, goes into the fear that we're not okay, and how do we correct that? This thing, shame, made sense 100,000 years ago when dreams and businesses weren't a thing. The highest priority was staying alive. And the way we did that was in tribes, was in groups, was in relying on what kept all of us alive. We were at a very base level of consciousness. And if we traveled outside of that, more often than not, we would die. And the sensation that would tell our body to get back in alignment with the tribe is shame. Now, if you think about a tribe's goal is to not die and then to stay alive. And that's not just stay alive for you, stay alive in the legacy and the anthology of the tribe, which is to procreate, which is to create more, which is an interesting reality as to why women generally, statistically, experience more shame than men. Because if that sensation does not bring them back into alignment, then there's no procreation. There is no continuation of life for that tribe. So it's an interesting little history lesson in terms of this experience, but it hijacks and blocks your business and your dreams. The energy you would more naturally put into that is being consumed by shame. So of course, we need violent manipulation to try and compensate for that, or we could start addressing the shame. Okay. See if I can do this quick enough before my laptop dies. And then I'll plug this back in. Okay. Unhealthy attachments wrecks our relationships. And trauma wrecks you. So we get hijacked in the pursuit of our business, our dreams, whatever those are. Unhealthy attachments hijack our relationships, whether professional or personal. And trauma hijacks the essence of you, your groundedness, who you are. Let me plug this back in. It didn't kick me out. Hooray, we did it. Okay. That is the essence of how we're operating. Now, our goal here is to not get rid of shame, to get rid of unhealthy attachments, and to get rid of trauma. That's not something I personally believe is an actual human possibility in this life. but it is definitely to get the natural systems, like the digestive system is to food. Okay? It consumes, then it separates and absorbs what it needs and gets rid of the rest. There's systems for that, for working through shame, working through trauma, working through unhealthy attachments, to being able to get a digestive system for how we experience the world back intact. Okay? Because trauma, for example, let's touch on that one just for a minute as we're wrapping things up today. Trauma is not the memory of what happened to you. It's not the story. It's not the narrative. Boiled down to its most basic and simple thing, trauma is a sensation. It is an activation that occurred in your body molecularly. And if we didn't have the technology of the body to be able to express it, to use it, to dissolve it, to release it, then it got frozen and stuffed in there. And now we've got to deal with it and everything else out here. And most of us have a pretty huge inventory of shame, unhealthy attachments, and trauma. Whether you believe it or not, for example, every human being on this call has been through the most traumatic thing a human being can experience. Every single person on here has been born. If you really think about it, strip away the beauty of being the person on the other side of the birth, but the actual human, the actual organism that is experiencing that, okay, that is unbelievably traumatic. So every one of us started with the same base level of trauma. And when we realize trauma is a sensation, not a story, we realize, wow, all of us have experienced that and continue to experience that, especially if we break it down to trauma is when something happens that your brain wasn't expecting. And if this trauma digestive system, if you will, isn't in place and working properly, whether it is constipated or we have trauma diarrhea, I don't mean to be crass, but it kind of gets the point across, that we are going to have to rely on manipulation just to try and create some version of more, because here and now is not intact. And that's a lot of work. That's like trying to sail in a boat full of holes. Okay, every seaworthy vessel has a bilge, has a way to get water that got into it out. But so many of us are working with unnecessary amounts of water, and we're burning out our bilge pump, or thinking that because we've got a bigger, more powerful bilge pump, that we are doing it right. How about we plug some holes? How about we allow ourselves to be able to operate more naturally in who we already are? Process and be able to figure out how to process and dissolve shame. Be able to navigate unhealthy attachments, to be able to dissolve those, to be able to work from a more secure place. I don't have time to go into the unbelievable brainwashing of codependence and unhealthy attachment that we're taught. The idea of romance in Western and modern society is unbelievably unhealthy, lacking boundaries and clarity and sense of self. And then trauma. Being able to understand trauma, not from, well, so-and-so went through this and I didn't go through that, so I don't have, what do I have to complain about? It's a sensation, and most of the stuff that most of us are dealing with happened before you were verbal as a human being. But we're more than happy to cope with it, to compensate for it in the name of motivational whatever. And we wonder why we burn out. We wonder why we get so exhausted, even though you could take atoms from the tip of your finger, and if we could spontaneously release the energy in those, they could level the city you're in right now. That's how powerful the amount of energy you have access to is. But these hijacks leave us requiring violent, all or nothing, afraid of celebration, and bypasses, substances. Okay? I heard a few months ago you couldn't even get Adderall if you wanted to, if you didn't already have a prescription, because they couldn't produce enough. Well, Paul, that's because this and that, and it's gone so many years without being diagnosed. One of the biggest reasons is because, not that we were any more emotionally enlightened 100 years ago, but 100 years ago, most of us were working the land. Most of us were waking up with the sun, going to bed with the sun. We were more connected to the earth and to nature and to the natural energy and essence of the power that created it, whatever you call that power. Whether you call it something scientific, you call it God, whatever it is. We were more connected to that, which was a huge insurance policy for being able to work through shame and unhealthy attachments and trauma to some degree, that it wasn't as destructive as it's becoming today in our unbelievably technologically advanced and overstimulated world. But that unbelievably overstimulating whatever world can be beautiful. We don't need to be afraid of social media for us or our kids. We don't need to be afraid of how busy we can get and how easily we can get there, as long as we're willing to start doing the embodied work. Not just the embodied work. I'm not asking anyone here to put a hold, a timeout on all the things you have on your shoulders in your life right now. That would be an unhealthy way of doing this anyway. Sure, you could sell all your crap, move to Tibet, and like become enlightened in the next few years. But unless you want to stay there the rest of your life, eventually you have to reinsert into this world. And that's going to be very uncomfortable if you try to do that cold turkey. You try to do that quickly. This is a slow process. But one of the most beautiful things, anyone ever had something go wrong in their day and their brain convinced them that everything was now going wrong? Okay, or even in a season of your business that one thing went wrong and it seemed to just create, well, that was because that's what we were anticipating. So our nervous system was preparing for it. So our mirror neurons, our reticular activation center created things in our relationships, things in our business, things in our dreams to be able to bring that reality to fruition because that's what we were anticipating. And if that didn't come into fruition, we'd freak out. That's what we're doing. We are manifesting a reality that meets our nervous system where it's at. And if we're not doing this embodied work, then we are continuing to be subject to a hijacked nervous system. Structure, strategies, business tactics, sales, all these different things. Let's keep learning them. But let's start unlocking the reason why they haven't seemed to actually click. And they seem to click for someone else, but they don't seem to click for us. All of these things get tied down into this whole body mindset when we can start dancing with the gifts of our thinker mind and start taking away its privileges that it's trying to overreach for the heart mind and the gut mind, actually start to create more harmony in this place. And it doesn't mean you're never going to have a bad day again. Okay? That's not a real place unless we want to get into the semantics of what a bad day actually means. But if you would be willing to just feel a little bit more of what you're actually feeling and the other pieces, we can get there. We can create far more income with less work. I've done it. I've watched people do it. I've helped people do it. I've helped people do the other game. Spent a lot of years as the business coach. People would come to me because they wanted to double their income, and I've done that. Okay, I've taken people from $30,000 a month to $180,000 a month in a year. Lots of them and versions of that, and that's fun. That has its place, and so I'm not leaving that behind. But I've also come back to that person a few years later, and although the bank account's still there, they're back feeling exactly the way they felt when they hired me at 30,000 or 10,000 or whatever it was. Because we're sensory creatures. That's what we actually want. We don't want the things. We don't want the stuff. We have been deeply convinced that those are what allow us to feel the way we want to feel. And if you can learn the technology of the body, you get to step out of the matrix and own the system. You get to feel what you want to feel because you're also willing to feel what you're actually feeling. And then suddenly you're no longer slave to needing the things the way we need air to breathe and food and water. Because when we need the things in our dreams and our businesses, we take a need approach, which is a survival approach, which robs us of our options, which is the definition of freedom. And if we're robbed of our options, we have no freedom. And we are trying to pursue survival so that even if we actually create it in paper, we are still in prison. We still don't ever get to feel like we are home in ourselves. Now, shocker, Paul ran over time. Okay, welcome to me. I want to honor anybody else's time that needs to go, but I am happy to stay and take you through some breath work. Take us about 20 minutes to do that. So if you want to stick around for that, I am happy to provide that. I said an hour, and this morning got a little caught up in this case. For whatever reason, some of the places we went that I wasn't planning to go felt more important than, hurrying and getting to a breathwork experience, even though that's probably the most important thing here. There is a technology for this. This is not just conceptual. Okay, it's the technology of presence, the technology of breath, the technology of movement, and the technology of sound. Is being able to understand what shame is and what it actually feels like in your body. It's being able to track and understand the unhealthy attachments and how to be able to navigate them differently without creating a war inside of you. And it is the technology of being able to find, experience, release, and dissolve trauma. Not all of it. Okay. No matter how well you brush your teeth, you still have to brush your teeth. Okay. No matter how clean you eat, you still have crap to get out. So that's why I like to compare this to your digestive system. And when you can understand this technology and work through this, things start to change. So I want to take just a few minutes to see if there's any questions from the fire hose that was today's conversation. And then for those of you that would like to stick around, we'll go through the breathwork experience. And you can just come off mute, or you can go to reactions and click raise your hand, and I'll click the button to take you off mute.
Hey, Paul, it's Melody.
Hey, Melody.
This has absolutely been amazing. I've been here taking loads of notes, and I think that, there's definitely a beautiful platform of disruption against the norms that are being toxically taught out there. So I appreciate all your teachings this morning and looking forward to this breath work.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have anything they want to share out loud as a takeaway, just to imprint a little bit more?
Paul, when you said that trauma is not the story, it's actually the sensation that was activated by what happened. That was pretty impactful to me. I had never thought about it that way, but how do you get rid of the sensation, or how do you deal with the sensation?
See, you revealed a little bit of the cards of what makes it challenging for us to do this. One of the reasons it got trapped is because it wasn't safe to express. And when I say express, I don't necessarily mean talk about it. Okay, my personal mentor, my personal coach, Eric Wallace, told me once that talking is not healing. Talking is managing and coping, and that's why psychology has its place, and it can be a really beautiful thing to have a pressure release valve that someone wouldn't have had otherwise. But that's not actual resolution. That's been one of the knocks on psychology and therapy for decades. Is it really moving the needle? Is it really helping people? And that's semantics in terms of what is actually helping people. Okay, having a crutch when your leg is hurt is helping you, but if you don't ever learn how to actually heal the leg, you've got to keep using the crutch. And that doesn't make the crutch bad, but we want to understand there's a difference between the thing that's helping you manage what you're experiencing versus what actually gets to it. And so that's the first piece, is the idea that how do we get rid of it is unsafe. Like, to say to that part of the body, hey, how do I get rid of you? It's like, whoa. So part of that is being able to use the stories, use the experiences as like a metal detector on the beach. Okay. So I'll work with my clients on, like, hey, timeline work, for example. What are things that you remember that didn't feel good, whether you put them in the bucket of trauma or not? And we'll use those. And when we can get to those, because our mind is so powerful, we'll usually bring a sensation, but most of us keep talking through the sensation. Okay. Joy can speak to this. I have the honor and pleasure of working with Joy, who's an extraordinary human being and realtor and coach and just an amazing person. And we'll talk just enough to get to the sensation, right, Joy? And then we'll take the metal detector of the story and set it down, and we'll go into the body. And the first thing we want to do is go in there and just be witness. And that can take some time. Breath can help release some of the grip we got on wanting to fix it and change it. Sound can help. Movement can help, and usually unconventional versions of these. And when we soften it, we get to a place where we're not trying to get rid of it. That's what most people get looped in with traumas. They want to get rid of the sensation. We want it to be safe enough for it to feel, because when it originally happened, it wasn't safe enough to fully experience. That's why it got frozen. That's why it got held in there. We didn't have the capacity to feel what was actually happening to us because we were just 3. We were 7. We were 15. We didn't really understand. And then we become older and we go back and think about that moments with our 35, 55-year-old, in your case, 42-year-old brain, okay? And we do that, but we're dissociated because we don't give permission for the sensation that that version of us actually experienced, which is not the version we are today. And if we'll actually become safe enough, which some people I've worked with, like we go into the nervous system and it's like Fort Knox. And you can't be a can opener. You have to rebuild your relationship with it like a traumatized kitten in a box. I don't mean to demean anyone's nervous system, but mine was. I'm a 305-pound, 6'5" former powerlifter and football player. And a big part of me was like traumatized kittens in a box. And there's a gentleness to letting them come out and kind of sniff your fingers and then get afraid and run back in and not chase, just let them do their thing to this kind of work. It's very patient, very slow work, but it has huge dividends in your energy. It has huge dividends in what you're doing. It can be terrifying at first because you're like, wow, this is a lot of work. And I still need to do all the work of the coping and the compensating that I'm doing. As soon as you start to do this work, you start to dissolve the need for the coping and the compensating in every other area of your life. And things actually start coming to you because your nervous system starts to relax. So it doesn't need to send you as much drama. It doesn't need to send you as much fear. It doesn't need to send you as much stuff out here in your reality to meet your nervous system where it is to make it feel comfortable. And again, when we say comfortable, we mean comfortable to your nervous system, meaning what it anticipated, not comfortable in terms of your cognition. So having a safe container to do that. There's shame and unhealthy attachments and trauma that you can work through yourself. But most of us that have felt like we've been in this rat race hamster wheel of Groundhog Day, even though our income may have increased, but it still feels the same way it did, we'll need a safe container to go through that. I've been able to do that in small groups, 10 or less, and I've been able to do that one-on-one. And so that I can't think of a better investment, because coping with this is costing us. So it's costing us so much money to do the things that keep us motivated, to keep us manipulated, to be pursuing what we think we want but don't actually do. That's an expensive game. I'm not an inexpensive coach, but man, what people are spending on an annual basis to play that game blows my mind compared to the fees that I charge. And I'm not the only one who does this. I'm not here as some savior. Like, none of you are going to get out of this game without me. I just happen to be the one that crossed paths with you up to this point. I might be the one that could help you figure this out, but that's not my call. I will never trust me about you more than I will trust you about you, no matter what I know and what I've done. Okay, does that help?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay, cool. Well, let's do some breath work. Let's do a little bit of experiencing what we're actually feeling. And a couple disclaimers, okay? What I describe and what I take you through may not be what you're actually experiencing. I'm going to share kind of what you will likely be experiencing, but if you're not, don't go, oh, there's something wrong with me, there's something broken in me. No, this is a group, but the opportunity to be in a little bit more intimate setting and help guide you through some of these factors would probably be a little bit different for each of you. So again, as long as we're all agreed that we'll try this, and the best thing you can do is be curious about whatever shows up, including whatever doesn't show up. So if we can all commit to be curious, about it, regardless of any prompts I say or things you might be feeling or thinking. Be curious about it. Then I'm happy to take all of you through this brief experience. And then for those of you who would like, just in case you do have to hop off, let me put here in the chat. I have got, where is the link? I've got just a couple of spots available for a complimentary call. Okay, this is not, I'm not offering any kind of investment opportunity for you right now. If you go to this link, let me get back to Zoom, wholebodymindset.com/unpack. Okay. If you want to unpack some of the things we talked about today, if this brought up anything for you, or you're just curious, okay, then let's set up a 45-minute call. No cost to you. This is a thank you for if you showed up on a Saturday morning, just come spend time with me in this space. I'm going to have the benefit of the doubt that this is something that's important to you, that you're not going to be wasting our time. I'm not the one that you don't waste my time. No, it's our time. We coexist here. So let's trust each other. And please, if you want one of those spots in the next week or so, click on that link or save it right now, and then you can go to it after we hop off here. And let's spend 45 minutes, let's unpack a little bit of what you heard, what you felt today, and explore some ways I might be able to serve you. Okay. I have lots of different places to meet you at, financially, emotionally, spiritually. So just keep that in mind. If any of you are going, oh, I don't want to waste his time. Well, let's let that be more of an intention than any kind of evaluation of yourself. If your intention is to heal, if your intention is to make an impact in this world for you and those that you care about, that's good enough for me for this call. That's more than good enough for me for this call to talk about what that could look like, as well as give you a little bit more privacy to share a little bit of what came up for you in this and what may come up for you here in the next 15-20 minutes with this breathwork experience. Okay, this presencing experience would probably be more about it. Okay, because we've been talking about from the get-go at the beginning of today that I've never met anyone who didn't want to feel better in some way, shape, or form, and the secret to feeling better is to get better at feeling. And so what I want to take you through is kind of a guided tour of how to resensitize your ability to feel. And it's super important to do this in what's called a non-dualistic mindset, meaning we're not looking for what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. We're being curious about whatever it is. We're just noticing it. And if you notice a part of you that needs it to be good or bad or right or wrong, just notice that part. There's nothing, you can't do this wrong. Okay, but a part of being able to get into the technology of the body, which can create more income with less work, because you're not putting all your efforts into compensating for dysregulation and manipulating yourself to some version of success, but you're actually embodying the here and now, and more becomes your birthright rather than something you have to earn and hustle for, which is a great way to sell tickets. Okay. Then it requires a resensitization. And historically, as mankind, we've had hunters and gatherers, and now we're all a blend of both. And the interesting thing about the hunter, which seems to be the more dominant perspective of the day, is that you only hunt once, twice a week, historically, thousands of years ago. When you hunt, you desensitize your body because you don't want to be thinking about stubbing your toe while you're trying not to get run over by a bison. Okay? So that makes sense biologically. The hunting would be a desensitization. But guess what the hunter would do the rest of the week? They would sing and dance and eat and rest and connect with their family, their tribe, and prepare for the next hunt. But man, somewhere along the way in 2024, we've been convinced we need to hunt 24/7, 365, that's actually noble. That's how you earn, That is unbelievably exhausting and unhealthy for the nervous system. So let's go through a few things to be able to drop into the body a little bit more. Like actually, biologically, physiologally. Okay, there's some things about this that are weird, and I've been doing this for years, and I still do it and go, this is weird. Okay, just FYI, you're not going to offend me if you're like, okay, this guy is woo woo. This guy, I'm not I've always been allergic to zealots of anything. Okay, but I'm super curious and super experimental, and these are some of the things that have helped me. So let me give you a little bit of this experience. And so that if something comes up in this that you want to have that call with me and unpack, you've got that as reference point, or something doesn't happen that you thought would happen, whatever it is, okay? And this is a very simple process. We're going to check in with our physicality first. Then we're going to drop into our energy. And I don't mean like crystals and whatever energy, okay? If any of you are like turned off by that kind of a thing, I mean like your molecular energy, okay? The atomic energy of your body, the quantum energy of your body. And then we're going to have a little bit of fun with a little bit of breath, a little bit of movement, a little bit of sound. Now, I would recommend that if you are one of those people that's like, I'm not sure about this, turn off your video, okay? No one has to keep their video on. If you feel like that would be a distraction of like, can anybody see me? Is anybody else looking? Okay. If it's easier for you, feel free to turn off your video, but everybody's muted other than me, so you don't have to worry about making any sounds that anybody else is going to hear. And all I would ask is just have some fun leaning against any edges you've got. What's interesting about the technology of the body is it's been ruined by domestication. We become domesticated creatures. Because guess what? You don't have to tell an animal to be present. You also don't have to tell an animal to not be depressed and not have anxiety. Isn't that interesting? Because they don't experience it, because they're totally present. Now, we have a cognition that they don't have that has obviously given us some really interesting advantages, but when have we really taken account to the disadvantages? We don't have to trade our cognition for the technology of our body like an animal has, but we can rebuild our connection to our body so that our cognition can serve us far better. Sound good? Awesome. Okay, cool. If you can, find yourself in a seated position, feet flat on the ground, and just take your hands and just rest them on your knees. Okay? And if you do nothing more than the first two steps, this can make a huge impact. It's that simple. And the first two steps are to take a big deep breath in through the mouth and let out a sigh on the exhale. And if you really give yourself permission to feel that, really give yourself permission to be just a little bit more present, a little bit more available, you can feel the awareness of you sink in just a little bit. And step two is the same. Another big deep breath in through the mouth and sigh. Soften the shoulders, soften the face, and just be curious about even the contrast of what you were noticing, what you were feeling, what was going on in your body, even before the first deep breath, and then even from the first to the second, to just notice the subtleties. Notice what it feels like to just be a little bit more in your body, to, in your mind, map out the room that you're in. Just in your mind with your eyes closed, just see the room that you're in vividly. To become more aware of the space between the furniture, the walls, become more aware of the space of just the room that you're in. And then becoming more aware of the amount of space in this room that your body is claiming. Starting to distinguish between the space of the room and the actual space that your physicality, your body is claiming from the top of your head and your hair, your ears, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your arms to the tip of your fingers, your torso, your hips, your thighs, your calves and feet to the tips of your toes. As you become more aware of the space your body is claiming, start to become aware of the chair and where and how the chair is holding your body. Become aware of your fingers resting on your knees and even just kind of tickling your legs a little bit, just to notice that sensation. Notice the sensitivity of the body that you're actually in right now, and the room you're actually in right now. Articulating the ankles a little bit, just to feel like, okay, this is me. This is the space in this room that I claim as me. Now we're going to check in with something that not a lot of us think about very often. We're going to check in with the infrastructure of our bones, our skeletal structure, this amazing tree-like structure inside of us that gives us shape and resilience, the foundational scaffolding of our strength and movement, our bones. How often do we think about those? Let's start in our feet. Just allowing your attention to go to your feet. Allowing your attention to expand to the intricate and complex construct of the many, many bones in the feet. Just appreciating its complexity, its systematization of the bones in your feet. Allowing your attention to move up to your ankles. And just lifting your heels up off the ground and just kind of rolling your ankles a little bit, kind of moving them around just gently, just to feel the movement and see if you can notice more than you would usually notice in terms of all the parts of your feet, your ankles, even your shins, your tibialis, your calves that are involved in just articulating your ankles. And now slow it down. And then bring your feet back to rest on the ground. And now allow your attention to notice the difference between the sensation of movement and the sensation of stillness. A little bit more aware of the construct of your feet and your ankles. And now moving your awareness up the skeletal structure of the tibia and the fibia and the shins. Moving up to your knees, moving up your femur and your thighs to your hips, construct of your pelvis and your hips. Most of the activated and frozen energy in anybody's system is right here in the hips. This is where the sensation of fight or flight comes from. This is where the activated energy gets trapped. This is where the core of our passion is felt. As you're aware of this space just a little bit more right here in your body, in this room, in this chair, let's bring a little bit of movement to our physicality. Just gently and slowly hula your hips and go clockwise or counterclockwise and go smoothly like a knife going through peanut butter, just a smooth, slow shift. And now go the other direction, smooth and slow. Some of us might be running into our thinker brain, our impatience or judgment right now. That's fine, just notice it. Whatever it is, can't do this wrong. Now shifting the hips even slower. And see how slow you can move your hips without actually stopping. And then let's find stillness. And just like the ankles, just notice there's a little bit more sensation in this area now. A little bit more movement of the energy, even when we're not moving. Might feel it down our legs, might feel it up into our chest. But we're noticing that just from moving the hips a little bit, loosening up what might be frozen or trapped energy, we can feel just a little bit more. Now moving our awareness back to the tailbone and moving up the vertebrae, just one vertebrae at a time, up and up and up, coming to our rib cage, becoming a little bit more of our rib cage, a little bit more aware, our scapula, our shoulder blades, coming to our collarbone, moving out to our shoulders, down the arm to the elbows, allowing our attention to move down our forearms and come to our wrists where our hands are resting on our legs. And as we allow our attention to move into another complex network and structure of bones in the hands, just allow your palms to rest on your legs and extend your fingers out, just stretching them gently. And then slowly and gently close them till you can feel the tips of your fingers on the inside of the palms of your hands. And then slowly feeling every part of this infrastructure working together. Extend your fingers again. And then flutter them just softly, like you're lightly playing a piano in the air. And then resting the hands in stillness on the legs. Seeing what you notice and sensation in the hands. And just for fun, all of these sensations, all the things you might be feeling you weren't noticing before, they're always here. Our brain's trying to manage an incredible amount of information. And one of the first things it starts to block out is what's happening in the body. So as we bring this back a little bit, just for fun, as you're allowing your attention to be in your hands, the strength and yet balanced gentleness that is available to us in our hands, see if even just for a moment you can allow your attention to be so keen, so sensitive that you can feel your fingernails growing. You feel that? Very subtle tickling. Now moving back into the structure of the hands, the wrists, moving back up the forearms and the elbows to the shoulders, coming back to the neck, moving up the vertebrae of the neck and to the base of the skull. As we reach the jaw, a very strong joint, we're going to gently open the jaw and do an intentional yawn where we'll go. If it allows you to release an actual yawn, lean into that. Yawns are a gift to your nervous system. It's a down regulation of your nervous system. If you ever find yourself yawning, it's because your body feels a little bit safer, which for a lot of us, because we're in a mild survival mode much of the day, we usually yawn and associate it with being tired, but that's usually because as we feel safer and loosen our grip on what we've been braced for all day, we realize how exhausting that's been. So as a correlation, we notice that we're often tired when we actually relax the nervous system a little bit. Allowing yourself to be aware of the jaw, the cheeks, the facial structure, the ears, the forehead. Noticing all these things. Now we're going to lean in just a little bit deeper. I want you to see if you can put your attention on any sensation or energy behind your eyes. See if you can notice anything, as subtle as it might be, behind the eyes. Moving down to your attention behind your mouth, not in your mouth or in your throat, but behind it. Being curious about this space. And then with another big deep breath in through the mouth, let's sigh and drop into the heart space. Ah. Feeling the heart space, which is actually not just where the heart is. The heart space goes all the way up to the tippy corner of one armpit and all the way across to the other. Just feeling the space. Let's get just a little bit of a sway from side to side. Just feeling a gentle sway, like a light branch, like a plant next to a pond, and the breeze just came up, and you're just swaying left to right, just softly, letting the head sway a little bit and the shoulders, just kind of feeling that movement, kind of sifting through the heart space, allowing it to open up a little bit more. Noticing your breathing, the gentle inhale and exhale, whether shallow or labored or smooth and free, just noticing. And now coming back to stillness. Have a little bit of fun with some sound. Take your hand and place it over your heart space, and the other hand on top of it. We're gonna have some fun with some sound. It's not about being super loud, but you want to be able to feel the vibration of your own sound. In just a moment, I'll demonstrate first. We'll take a big deep breath in, and we'll start really high or really low and go really high and then come back down. We're going to do that with an ah. Okay, like the dentist says, say ah. And so you'll take a big deep breath in like this and go ah. Go as high as you can and then ah. Come back down. Okay, so we'll do this together. Everybody's on mute, so just lean into this, have some fun with this. Even if there's some people around that are going to be like, what is going on? Let's not let our social contracts stop us from actually feeling better. Let's push against that edge a little bit. Everybody in 3, 2, 1, big deep breath in and start low. Let it land and just be curious. This might be one of those parts where we're all going, this is weird. Yes, it is. But it's also weird that we're willing to beat ourselves up the way that we are to get something we don't actually want. So what weird do you actually choose? Now we're going to have some intentional fun with some of this sound. And we're going to start low again, but this time we're only going to bring it up as high as we need to be able to feel the sound right behind our hands. That might sound strange to you, but you'll see what I mean. We'll take a big deep breath in just a moment, start low and bring it up until it's right behind your hands like this. Oh, I can feel that right behind my hands. Oh, and I'm going to play with it a little bit, pulse it a little bit like you're revving an engine on a motorcycle. Okay, so everybody give this a try. Big deep breath in 3, 2, 1. Start low. Oh. When you get right behind your hands, just play with it a little bit. Feel that sound right in this space. You can take another breath and play with it if you'd like. Ah, connecting the sensation of your touch and the sound and your breath. Just allowing ourselves to land a little bit more deeply in the body, settling in, returning to your normal breath. This is part of the foundational work of being able to feel a little bit more so that we can feel better. Now letting your hands slide down about halfway between your heart space and your belly button to the solar plexus. Just allow yourself to be curious about what it feels like in this space. As human beings, we actually emit light. We actually emit and let off photons of light and energy. And this is the space where more goes in and out of us than anywhere else. Right here in the solar plexus. So just being curious about what it feels like here. Does it feel like a light that's shining? Does it feel dull? Does it feel locked out? Does it feel neutral? None of these are good or bad. We're not diagnosing an illness. We're just being curious about the sensation. And then gently sliding the hands down to the belly. And in just a moment, we'll take a big deep breath in. And I want you to imagine you're breathing in all this light, all this energy, and creating like this grapefruit-sized ball of energy in your stomach. And we're going to let out a messy sigh, which those of you who don't know what a messy sigh is, it sounds like this. Ugh. So in just a moment, I'll count you down. We'll take a big deep breath in and concentrate it all in the belly and let out a messy sigh and just let our attention to drop back into the hips, back into the pelvis. So big deep breath in 3, 2, 1. Breathe it in. Messy sigh and drop it down. Ugh. Take your time to relax. Soften the body. Soften the gut. Soften the shoulders and the face. Soften the hands. And just be here. Just be with you. The last piece is we're going to bring some breath into this. We're going to stir things up and see what else is in here in terms of sensation or feelings with what's called a 2-part breath, which is just 2 breaths in through the mouth. I recommend you purse your lips a little bit. It won't dry out your throat as bad. And then you'll just release on the exhale, just surrender. You don't blow the exhale out, so you're not blowing the air out. You're just breathing in twice, one in the belly, one in the chest, which happens naturally for most of us. And then you just relax and just let out whatever air comes out naturally. So let's go ahead and start getting a rhythm. So just follow me in, out. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. If you can keep that pace, great. If you can't, just find the pace that makes sense to you, but just have 2 distinct inhales and then relax on the exhale. In, out, in, out, in, out. We're not going to stay here for too long. Okay, I do a full breath work experience that is probably one of the wildest things you'll ever experience in your life. And we do this for about 30 minutes. We're just going to do it for a moment here. Okay, we're just going to loosen up some things. Breath is an amazing way to activate the body in terms of resensitizing, being able to feel in, out, in, out, in, out. Just a few more. Just a few more, not too many. Okay, so we'll do about 10 more now. In, out, in, out, in, out. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, about 5 more. 3 more. In, out, in, out. Now breathe in and out as fast as you can, like it's through a tiny little straw. Tiny little straw as fast as you can. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Keep going. Keep going as fast as you can. In, out, in, out. Okay, few more, few more, few more. Now blow it all out. Take a huge, big, deep breath in and hold it at the top. Hold it, hold the breath, but try to relax the body. Hold the breath, but try to relax the body and just feel that energy. Just feel that oxygen, that life working through the body. Feel that. Just be with it. Stay with it. There might be some uncomfortable lightheadedness. There might be some other sensations. A lot of us have not spent much of our time feeding our body breath, so this might feel weird. But just be with it. Now let about half of it out. And then hold. And relax. Just be in the space. Now blow it all out. Do every last bit of it and hold at the bottom for about 5 seconds. And then take one more big deep breath in and a gentle sigh. Now just land as comfortable as you can be, aligned, relaxed, soft, just available to feel whatever's being felt right now, whatever you're noticing. without any of it needing to be right or wrong, good or bad. Any emotions that may be coming up, just allow them to be here. Be curious about them. Trust yourself that you're able to feel whatever you need to feel right now. For some of you, it may feel so effortless to be you right now in this moment. So many of us craving something that we underestimate. We crave to feel like we're on track. What if you gave yourself permission in this moment right here to embrace a reality that you are totally on track? That nothing about your life is happening to you, nothing about your life is happening for you, but everything in your life is happening with you. Think of a time that you felt so loved, so supported, so seen and available, connected, flowing. And allow yourself to invite that in right now. And no matter how small of a dose you can seem to muster, just giving yourself permission to feel it, even if it's just for a brief moment, and seeing if you can nurture it. Let it expand just in this moment. Taking a big, deep breath in through the mouth and a satisfying yawn. Ah. This is the playground for creation. This is the space where we don't need manipulation. We don't need violent motivation or unbounded momentum to get where we want to go, because this is where we want to be. And this is where we can invite more into the here and now, to get inspired ideas, to be able to be in alignment with what we think we want and what we actually want, to be in alignment with ourselves so we can be in better alignment with others, so that we can create more with less exhausting, unfulfilling work, and with more presence, more connection, more passion to actually feel. Gently taking your arms and just wrapping them around you, just giving yourself a hug. Even if part of you feels like this is corny, just allowing yourself to feel what it's like to wrap your arms around you. And in just a moment, we'll take a big, deep breath in of gratitude. In 3, 2, 1. Letting the hands and arms soften and come back to the lap. Rubbing the legs lightly with the hands, articulating the ankles again. Any movement or stretching you may feel, going gently and softly right now. When you're ready, just softly opening the eyes. This is not the place I'm asking you to be all day, but we'll want this to be home base. This is home base. When this gets to become a more natural home base, what we're trying to create, what we want to play in, gets to be a playground. It gets to be fun. Sometimes fun is hard work. Sometimes fun is challenging. Sometimes fun even has some pain involved. But it comes from a different place. And it uses less exhausting resources, replenishing, rejuvenating resources that we were originally built to be able to have, to be able to make the most of this human experience, which can include greater income financially, deeper relationships. All of these things are our birthright. but remembering that we will always call in what our nervous system can actually handle. And if this becomes home base, our nervous system can handle more options. And if it can handle more options, guess what that is? That is more freedom. Thank you for joining me this morning. Thank you for abiding me going quite over in time. I do appreciate your willingness to stick around and hope that this was worthwhile for you. Again, please, if it would serve, book the call. Let's unpack some of this. Let's talk about where you're actually at and where you want to go from here, whether that's in working with me in some way, shape, or form or capacity. I have a lot of different ways that you can do that, that aren't just one-on-one. I only have a certain amount of capacity for that currently. And or to guide you into some places you want to look, with other resources that each of you have available to you. So much love. Have an amazing Saturday. And I hope to get to connect with you as many as possible in the next week or so. So are you waving goodbye, Cindy, or do you have a question? Waving bye. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon.